Hello everyone, welcome back. How's it going? Today I'm going to talk about Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. You can see the Blu-ray cover right there. So this was the fifth entry in the original run of Star Trek films. Usually considered the weakest of the franchise at that time, and I'll get into some reasons of why that is. Although there's a number of reasons for it. Although I do have some affection for this film, and I'll talk about that as well. So this was directed by William Shatner, who, of course, Leonard Nimoy had directed the previous two, and Shatner, through some contracts where he and Nimoy were able to equal things out as far as their creative input in the franchise. I'm really simplifying that, but Shatner was given the chance to direct the fifth film, and he developed a story which will be more of a theological, even religious-based story about false prophets in the Star Trek universe and religious fervor, and ultimately leading to a philosophical conclusion about the nature of faith and how cultures view the God concept and all these things. And it was a very ambitious story. And Gene Roddenberry, of course, was also interested. The creator of Star Trek was interested in those themes of God and the universe and all that. So. And Shatner writes about he was very interested in televangelists on TV and how they were gaining followings in the 80s and were always in the news for scandals and various things in the 80s. So, I want to tell a story like that in the Star Trek universe a couple hundred of years in the future. So it was an interesting concept, no doubt. You get into the production of this movie, and there's a lot of conflict, and that's a constant really throughout all the making of the Star Trek movies. A lot of egos, a lot of bruised egos, a lot of haggling over everything, over screen time, over the script, story points. Like, there's a number of stories around this film. Like, for instance, one of the plot points was that the entire crew would turn against Kirk at one point because of their religious fervor, including Spock and McCoy. And the two actors, of course, Nimoy and DeForest Kelley, did not want that. They felt that would be completely inconsistent with their characters to betray Captain Kirk. So things like that. But just a lot of conflict in the making of this movie. There was a writer's strike. There was Teamster labor strikes during the making of the film, and Shatner was a first-time director as well. So there was just a lot going on in the making of this film. And I know Shatner published a book. I have it around. His daughter Elizabeth Shatner wrote it, which has some interviews and some inputs on the making of the film. I know Shatner himself wrote a book, I think, Movie Memories, on the making of the film. So there's been a lot of material out there. And I know they also ran into trouble with special effects where they couldn't use ILM, the premier special effects company. And so there was a lot of problems came up with the special effects, with the story, with some egos among Paramount executives and creative people, and Shatner in the middle of all this. So it's no surprise that this film, what came out of it was a bit of a mixed bag, to put it mildly. So just quickly, just to set up the story. So it's we start out with Kirk, McCoy, and Spock are on shore leave, and they get called out of it because there's a hostage situation on this planet. And we have Cybok, who is a mystic who is leading a religious revival throughout the the star systems, and the big twist, of course, is that Cybok was Spock's brother, right? Which, and I know this annoyed fans too, because Spock had never mentioned having a brother, and you would think that would have come up at some point, but you know, it is what it is. And played by Lawrence Luckinbill, who was didn't do a lot of movies, but I thought he was actually pretty good in this as this kind of misguided religious figure in the film, who's a Vulcan and has a connection with Spock, and like I said, I thought that worked well. I've heard Timothy Leary, the famous professor, philosopher who was a proselytizer for psychedelics and things like that, also inspired the character. But and not to get too caught up in the plot, but Cybok leads a mutiny on the Enterprise, and he wants to take them into the Great Barrier, where he thinks that they will discover the secrets of the universe and possibly encounter a god or a creator or some figure like that. So a lot of big ideas in this film, no doubt about it. And there are some really good scenes in the film, I think when the focus is on Kirk and Spock and McCoy, and one of the methods used by Cybok is he gets people to confront what he calls their inner pain, and once you confront that, you'll be free, feel freer, kind of a pop psychology type concept there. And but there is an interesting scene where Spock and McCoy have their moments where they face their pain, and Kirk's reaction to that is interesting, but I think very much keeping in character. But that scene works well. And I know Roger Ebert, in his review, which was mostly negative, he wrote about how there were moments in this film that were truly awe-inspiring, though. They were disappointing, but there were some moments in the film where you do have that sense of wonder, especially when they are approaching the Great Barrier, they call it, where and there is a lot of suspense. And the Jerry Goldsmith, who came back to do the score, is really good. And we do, as an audience, we are wondering what's going to happen when they encounter, who knows what they'll encounter there, and that works well. Yeah. So there are some true moments of wonder. There's also a lot of kind of just silly, goofy moments. I don't know if those are remnants from trying to channel the previous film, The Voyage Home, where just some slapstick humor on the Enterprise with Scotty and Uhura and things like that. Ebert, in his review, I kept going back to, he really did not like the campfire scenes with Spock, McCoy, and Kirk, which I like. I think those scenes are charming, and I liked them, so I didn't really have a problem with that. But yeah, they're and just some of the things that happen in the movie are kind of fuzzy, like the mutiny on the Enterprise, and like I said, some of the special effects shots are not quite where they should be, probably. So and then the actual climax of the film, which I actually find interesting, what they do encounter there. It is kind of a big fake out, but once again, I thought that was an interesting solution to the story. And it does end on this kind of a note of unity and understanding. So you can kind of definitely see what they were going for in telling the story. It's just with the way the film told the story, it just didn't quite come across, I think, the way they had hoped. And box office wise, Final Frontier didn't do quite as well as the previous three, but this was a busy summer of '89 when you had Batman and Lethal Weapon 2 and Last Crusade and many films coming out that were very popular. So Final Frontier, considered a misfire at the time, but like I said, there's good stuff in it, and I do like this film in my own way. I think a lot of it is nostalgia. I did not see this one in the theater, but I remember VHS, right, to get on VHS, and watching it a lot. In particular, like over like the holiday break of 1989, and all the movies of the summer were coming out on video. So Batman and Last Crusade and all those movies. So I don't know. I get just gets me nostalgic, and I kind of would. Final Frontier, I liked the movie. I remember watching it as a kid, and I still enjoy it today. I mean, I can still see where it's not quite up to the level of what the previous three movies had done, but hey, it's another chance to hang out with your favorite characters, and there's some truly, I think, some wondrous moments in the film, and some good character stuff that might compensate for some of the shortcomings of the film. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you later.